Have you ever watched someone destroy 6 months of your work in less than 60 seconds with scissors in broad daylight while whistling? Yeah. That happened. It was just past 7:30 a.m. On a crisp October morning, the kind of morning where the grass still glitters with dew and you're feeling good because things for once are stable. I was outside, tending to my flower bed like I always do, carefully checking the leaves and soil around these rare hybrid flowers my dad had been researching. They are called blue moonlight's purple petals edged in silver, and no, they are not just for show. My father, a retired pharmaceutical researcher, had spent the better part of 2 decades studying the compounds in those flowers, hoping they'd lead to some kind of natural treatment for his own heart condition. And they were starting to show promise, real promise. So yeah, those flowers meant something. Then came her. Karen Silverstone, HOA president, dictator of Maplewood Gardens, woman of the clipboard and aggressively white SUV, pulled up like she was responding to a 911 call. No knock, no greeting, just marched straight onto my property, looked down at my flowers like they were radioactive waste, and announced, "These violate Community Aesthetic Standard Section 3.2.1. They'll need to be removed immediately." Now I could have lost it right there, but I didn't. I tried to explain, told her these flowers weren't just decorative, they were part of a long-standing medical research project. My dad's. She stared at me like I told her I was growing alien mushrooms to summon the apocalypse. Then she said, and I quote, "This isn't a botanical lab, Mr. Moonfield. It's a residential neighborhood. And we have rules for a reason." That's when she pulled out the scissors. Not pruning shears. Not garden clippers. Scissors, long, sharp, weapon-looking scissors like she stole them from a prop table for some low-budget thriller. And before I could even get the word "wait" out of my mouth, snip. She sliced the biggest bloom off its stem. The one I'd been nursing for 3 months. Then another. And another. By the time I found my voice again, the flower bed looked like a crime scene. She stepped back, real proud of herself, tossed a few blooms into a bag, actually pocketed some, and said I'd be getting a formal violation and a $500 fine in the mail. Then she left. Just got in her car and drove away like she hadn't just committed flower homicide. Emily, my 8-year-old daughter, came outside with her cereal bowl and asked, dead serious, "Dad, did that lady just murder your garden?" I didn't even have words. But then she held up her tablet and said, "Don't worry. My drone caught the whole thing." Turns out, Emily had been recording footage for a school project that morning and she'd caught everything. Karen trespassing. Karen cutting. Karen pocketing stolen samples. And that one priceless moment where she calls my flowers hideous while standing dead center on my lawn. Now here's something Karen didn't know. Before I became a freelance landscaper, I worked for 3 years as a paralegal for one of the most aggressive litigation firms in the state. I know my way around bylaws. I know how to build a case. And what Karen just handed me on video, no less, was enough to make a judge raise both eyebrows and ask, "She really said that?" But I wasn't going to act out of rage, not yet. I was going to act smart. That night, I started digging. Not just into our HOA's bylaws, but into Karen's pattern. Because anyone that bold, that public, that confident in their own authority isn't doing it for the first time. And sure enough, the deeper I looked, the uglier it got. Dozens of violations issued over the past few years, mostly to residents who disagreed with her publicly. Meanwhile, her friends. People with unapproved paint colors, visible trash bins, even a guy running a car repair business from his garage. Not a single citation. But the real turning point came the next morning when Elena Pebblestone knocked on my door. Elena lived 3 houses down. I'd always known her as the quiet retired lady with the roses that bloomed like clockwork. But that day, she walked in with a manila folder thick enough to choke a shredder, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Karen's gone too far." I think it's time someone showed her what accountability looks like. Turns out, Alena was the former HOA president, the one Karen replaced in what could only be described as a shady, low-turnout election held during a snowstorm. Alena had receipts, bank statements, old board emails, proof of meetings that never happened. And here's the kicker: a paper trail connecting HOA funds to projects that directly benefited Karen and her circle. Alena had been waiting for the right moment, and Karen had given it to her by cutting those flowers. She didn't just mess with me, she gave Alena the last puzzle piece she needed. We put together a plan. At the annual HOA meeting 2 weeks out, I would present the drone footage, the documents, the evidence. But before that, we kept gathering stories. Neighbors came out of the woodwork with their own tales: fines for bird feeders, flags, dog collars. One man got penalized for his son's basketball hoop being left out too long. Another for having 2 lawn chairs that didn't match. It wasn't a community, it was a kingdom. And Karen was queen. The night of the meeting, the room was packed. More people than I'd ever seen attend anything HOA related. Karen stood at the front like she was running a TED Talk on suburban tyranny. But as soon as I raised my hand and said, I have a few things to share before we vote, the room got real quiet. I started with the drone footage, no commentary, just facts. Then I showed her violation history side by side with the protected properties. Then the financials highlighted, sourced, itemized. Finally, I held up the shears Karen had dropped in my yard, still with blue flower sap on the blades. When I was done, there was this silence that lasted just long enough to feel electric. Then Alena stood up and said, I motion for a vote of no confidence. Unanimous. Karen was removed that night. Her role, her power, her fines and threats all gone. The board was restructured. Alena was reinstated. All future decisions would be public, voted on, documented. The bylaws were written to actually serve the people who live there, not the people trying to control them. My dad's research. It's back on track. He's got partners now, university support, even NIH interest. The blue moonlights are blooming again, not just in our yard, but in neighbors' yards too. Emily says she wants to plant one in every lawn on our street, so we remember what happens when people stand up. And Karen. Well, last I heard, she's been banned from serving on any HOA board in the county. The irony. The woman who thought she could control everything lost everything because she couldn't mind her own business for 5 minutes. So yeah, all that over a flower bed. But you tell me, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. Ever dealt with an HOA like this? Ever watched a little person with a clipboard act like they run the world? Because sometimes all it takes to bring down a tyrant is a drone, a daughter, and a flower someone should have never touched.